Okay, so welcome back. So let's do this one. Okay, so we've got this equation. We know what to do. We've got to find the least common divisor and multiply through by the least common divisor. So what is the least common divisor? Well, this can't be factored out. This can't be factored in further, but this can. This becomes x times x plus 1, which is both of these. So it looks like the least common divisor is going to be this. Okay, so now if we multiply through by x times x plus 1, well, if we multiply this by x times x plus 1, the x plus 1 is going to go away, so we get 2x minus, here we get the x, so we need to multiply the top and the bottom, so we're missing the x plus 1. So if we multiply through by the least common divisor, the x is going to cancel out, and we're going to be left with x plus 1. And then of course here, if we multiply it through by the least common divisor, the whole thing's going to go away, so we end up with negative 2. And so that's where we end up with. Okay. Now if this is too much, if this is going too fast, then do your intermediate steps like I've been doing in the last several videos. Okay. So now, all I'm going to do now, be careful. We had a subtraction here. That's why I put this in parentheses, because we're subtracting this whole thing, right? So this becomes 2x minus 1 equals negative 2. And so now we want to solve for x. Well, this is going to give us x minus 1 equals negative 2. And if we add 1 to both sides, we get x equals negative 1. And you'd be like, okay, that's my answer, right? That is x. And if you did that, you'd be wrong. Because what happens, look at this negative 1. So you go back to the original equation. What happens if I plug in negative 1 here or negative 1 here? I get 0 in the denominator. And we cannot have 0 in the denominator. Remember, it's undefined. So in this case, even though we solved and we got x equals negative 1, if you check, it fails. And so that is not a solution, which means there is no solution to this equation. Okay, so this also, this should also be something to remind you, and this is the proof in the pudding, why you should always check your answers to make sure they make sense. Because and this always happens, by the way, whenever you have a variable in the denominator, the unknown variable that you're solving for in the denominator, when you're solving these types of equations, it is always possible that your answer is going to be an answer that won't work. Okay, like in this case. We call these, when this happens, we call these extraneous solutions. Because they're solutions for the way we did it, but they don't solve it. Because you end up getting, like for example, 0 in the denominator. Or you end up getting negative under a radical, under a square root. Something like that. So again, always double check whenever you're doing this method and you're multiplying through by the LCD where the unknown is in the denominator, then you always want to make sure you check to make sure that the answer you get doesn't cause any problems. Okay? So just make sure you keep that in mind. Take care.